The first thing my husband did every morning wasn't kiss me. It was check his phone. The moment I walked into the room, he flipped it face down. If I sat beside him, he locked the screen. If I accidentally picked it up to move it, he snatched it back with a nervous smile. At first, I convinced myself I was imagining things. Then the password started changing. The notifications disappeared. Entire conversations vanished overnight. Whenever I asked who he was texting, he'd laugh and say, "Since when did marriage require daily inspections?" Maybe I would have believed him if he hadn't made one tiny mistake, one notification, one forgotten backup, one detail he never imagined I'd find. That single mistake didn't just expose his secret. It destroyed 21 years of marriage in less than 5 minutes. My name is Zinal Masigo. I'm 43 years old, and I own a successful interior architecture studio in Cape Town. For 21 years I believed my husband Omari Campbell was the safest place in my life. He was a respected financial consultant, a devoted father to our teenage daughter, and the man who had stood beside me through every success and failure. At least, that's who I thought he was. Over the course of a few months, he became someone I barely recognized. His phone became more important than our conversations. His laughter disappeared whenever I entered the room, and every answer sounded carefully rehearsed. I wasn't looking for betrayal. I was trying to understand why the man I loved suddenly treated me like a stranger. For a long time, Zinal believed every marriage went through difficult seasons. She told herself that people became busy, work became stressful, and routines naturally changed after many years together. That was exactly what she kept repeating in her mind whenever something about Omari felt different. She never imagined that the biggest change in their marriage would begin so quietly that she almost missed it. First, it was only small things. Omari had always left his phone on the kitchen counter or beside the bed without thinking twice. Now it never left his hand. If he walked to another room, the phone went with him. Even when taking out the trash or checking the mailbox, he slipped it into his pocket as though he couldn't be separated from it for even a minute. Zinal noticed the change, but she didn't want to jump to painful conclusions. Then came the evening phone calls. Almost every night, his phone would vibrate, and he would quickly stand up before answering. Instead of talking in the living room like he used to, he walked outside, closed the front door behind him, and stayed away for 10 or 15 minutes. Whenever he came back, he acted completely normal, but his smile looked forced, and he avoided looking directly into her eyes. The more carefully he protected his phone, the more uncomfortable Zinal became. Every notification made him nervous. Every message was hidden before she could accidentally see the screen. Sometimes she would simply walk into the room, and he would immediately lock his phone and place it face down on the table. He always acted as though he had nothing to hide, yet everything he did suggested the opposite. When Zinal finally gathered the courage to ask if something was wrong, Omari laughed softly and told her she was imagining problems that didn't exist. He said work had become demanding and accused her of becoming too suspicious over nothing. His calm voice made her feel guilty for even asking. Soon, she began questioning herself instead of questioning him. Maybe she really was overthinking. Maybe stress was making her see things that weren't there. But deep inside her heart, a quiet voice refused to disappear. It kept telling her that people could hide secrets with words, but their actions always whispered the truth first. A few evenings later, Omari asked Zinal to help him organize a presentation for an important client. It surprised her because he had not asked for her help in weeks. She happily sat beside him at the dining table, thinking that maybe things were finally returning to normal. For a little while, they worked together just like they used to, discussing colors, fixing charts, and correcting small spelling mistakes. It almost felt like the distance between them had disappeared. As Omari stepped into the kitchen to answer another phone call, Zinal stayed behind to adjust one of the presentation slides. She clicked to save the file, and suddenly a small message appeared in the corner of the laptop screen. It stayed there for only a second before disappearing. It read, "Cloud synchronization completed." The message looked ordinary. Most people would never pay attention to something so small. But before Zinal could even think about it, Omari hurried back into the room. The moment he noticed the message, his expression changed. Without saying a word, he quickly grabbed the laptop and closed the screen. "It's nothing," he said with a nervous smile. "Just one of those computer updates." His answer came far too quickly. Zinel simply nodded and pretended to believe him. She didn't argue. She didn't ask another question. Instead, she quietly watched him. His hands seemed tense as he reopened the laptop a few minutes later. He checked something in a hurry before continuing with the presentation as if nothing had happened. For the rest of the evening, she couldn't stop thinking about that tiny notification. It wasn't the message itself that bothered her. It was the way Omari reacted to it. If it truly meant nothing, why did he rush to hide it? Why did such a simple notification make him look so uncomfortable? That night, as she lay awake beside him, a different thought entered her mind. She had spent weeks wondering what might be hidden inside his phone. But now she realized she had been looking in only one place. Phones could be locked. Messages could be deleted. Passwords could be changed. But information often lived somewhere else too. For the first time, Zinel began to wonder if the answers she had been searching for were never inside his phone at all. Maybe his biggest secret was waiting somewhere he had completely forgotten. Several days passed, but that strange notification never left Zinel's mind. She didn't spend her time trying to catch Omari or secretly follow him. She still hoped there was a simple explanation for everything. She wanted to believe that the man she had loved for 21 years was telling the truth. Even so, the quiet feeling in her heart refused to disappear. One Saturday afternoon, while Omari was away at work, Zinel decided to organize old family pictures on the shared home computer. Their daughter had asked her to print a few vacation photos for a school project, so she opened the folder where they normally kept their family memories. As she searched through pictures from birthdays, holidays, and beach trips, she smiled at the happy moments they had shared together. While moving files into new folders, she noticed another folder she had never paid attention to before. It wasn't named after a vacation or a family event. Instead, it had a long system name that looked like something the computer had created automatically. At first, she ignored it, thinking it was just another technical file. But something caught her eye. The folder showed a recent update date. She frowned. How could an old system folder be updated only a few days ago? Curious, she clicked on it. A message appeared saying it was an encrypted device backup that had been created automatically months earlier. She wasn't trying to search through Omari's private life. In fact, she almost closed the window immediately. But then she remembered his words. There is nothing going on. If nothing had changed, why were backup files still updating? She looked more carefully. The backup wasn't brand new. It had started many months earlier, and had quietly continued syncing in the background without anyone paying attention. It seemed the computer had been saving information automatically all this time. Zinel sat very still. Her heart began to beat faster. She wasn't feeling jealous anymore. She was feeling confused. The pieces no longer fit together. Omari insisted everything was normal, yet hidden files continued to update behind the scenes. He had changed passwords, protected his phone, and deleted conversations, but this backup had quietly remained in the background, almost invisible. For the first time, Zinel realized that technology sometimes remembered what people tried to forget. She took a slow breath and stared at the screen. She still didn't know what the backup contained, but deep inside, she had a feeling that opening it might change her life forever. With trembling hands, Zinel carefully opened the backup. She still hoped she would find nothing more than old files and forgotten photos. Part of her wanted to close the folder and walk away before discovering something that could never be unseen. But another part of her knew she had already come too far to ignore the truth. The backup slowly loaded onto the screen. At first, everything looked ordinary. There were family pictures, work documents, and old contacts. Then another folder appeared. It contained messages that no longer existed on Omari's phone. She immediately recognized some dates. They matched the same weeks when he had started hiding his phone, changing passwords, and stepping outside to answer calls. Her breathing became heavier. He had deleted those conversations from his phone. But he had forgotten that the cloud had quietly saved them long before he erased them. One by one, the messages appeared. There were friendly conversations that slowly became personal. Then came late-night chats filled with promises, private jokes, and plans to meet. Soon after, she found hotel reservations, flight confirmations, and dinner bookings. Every date matched business trips that Omari had told his family were important meetings with clients. The deeper she looked, the harder it became to deny what she was seeing. There were voice notes filled with affection, photographs that had been deleted from his phone, even shared travel plans that had never been mentioned at home. But the affair wasn't the only secret hiding inside those files. Another folder held documents connected to bank accounts and investment records. Zinel opened them carefully, expecting routine financial paperwork. Instead, she discovered transfers from their joint investments into accounts she had never seen before. The amounts weren't small mistakes or forgotten payments. They were carefully planned transactions spread across many months, making them difficult to notice unless someone looked at every record together. Her heart sank. This wasn't only about broken trust anymore. It was about the future they had built together, the savings they had worked for, the dreams they had planned. Every document told the same painful story. While Omari smiled at home and insisted everything was fine, he had been hiding far more than secret messages. Zinel leaned back in her chair, tears filling her eyes. He believed deleting chats and changing passwords had erased the evidence forever. But one forgotten cloud backup had quietly protected every truth he thought was gone. In that single moment, 21 years of trust began falling apart. One saved file at a time, Zinel wiped the tears from her face and forced herself to keep reading. She needed to know who the woman behind all those messages was. As she opened more conversations, one name appeared again and again. Naledi Touré. At first, Zinel expected to find messages from someone who knew exactly what she was doing. She imagined a woman who had no respect for another family's happiness. But the more she read, the more her first impression began to change. The early conversations were surprisingly ordinary. Omari introduced himself as a successful financial consultant who had already gone through a painful divorce. He spoke about starting over and trying to rebuild his life. He described himself as a lonely man who wanted another chance at happiness. Every message was carefully written, making himself sound honest and trustworthy. Naledi believed every word. As Zinel continued reading, she learned that Naledi was a respected luxury real estate broker. Her work often brought her into contact with wealthy clients, and that was how she had first met Omari. Their business conversations slowly turned into personal ones. They talked about their dreams, their careers, and the future they hoped to build together. There was only one problem. Everything Omari had told her was built on lies. He never mentioned that he was still living in the same house with his wife. He never said that every morning he still sat at the same breakfast table with his family. He never admitted that the money he was quietly moving into hidden accounts belonged to the life he had built with Zinel. Then Zinel found a message that completely changed how she saw Naledi. In one conversation, Naledi asked, "Are you sure there is nothing left between you and your ex-wife? I don't want to hurt anyone." Omari replied without hesitation, "I promise." That chapter ended a long time ago. Zinel closed her eyes. Her heart broke all over again. Not because of the affair alone, but because she finally understood the full truth. Naledi had never known she existed. She wasn't helping Omari betray a marriage. She had been living inside the same lie. Two women. Two completely different lives. One dishonest man standing between them. At that moment, Zinel stopped seeing Naledi as the enemy. She realized they had both trusted the same person, believed the same promises, and been deceived by the same carefully created story. The real betrayal had never been between the two women. It had always come from Omari. For almost 2 days, Zinel kept staring at Naledi's phone number without calling. She didn't know what to say. Part of her wanted to delete the number and never think about it again. Another part wanted answers that only Naledi could give. In the end, she realized they were both connected by the same painful truth. She finally sent a short message. "Hello, my name is Zinel. I believe we need to talk. This isn't about blaming you. It's about discovering the truth." Several hours passed before a reply arrived. Naledi agreed to meet. When they sat across from each other at a quiet cafe, neither woman knew what to expect. The silence between them felt heavy. Zinel could see confusion and fear in Naledi's eyes. Before saying anything else, Zinel placed a family photograph on the table. It showed her, Omari, and their teenage daughter smiling during a holiday. Naledi looked at the picture and her face turned pale. She whispered, "He told me he was divorced." At that moment, Zinel knew everything she had read was true. Instead of arguing, both women began sharing their stories. Zinel explained how Omari had started hiding his phone, changing passwords, and acting like a stranger in his own home. Naledi admitted that Omari had spoken about building a future together and had promised that his marriage had ended years ago. Then they compared dates. Every business trip Omari had mentioned to his wife matched the weekends he had spent with Naledi. Every excuse he gave one woman became another promise to the other. His entire life had been built around carefully planned lies. Next, Zinal showed her the cloud backup. Together they read messages, checked travel confirmations, listened to voice notes, and compared bank records. Naledi was shocked to discover that some expensive gifts Omari claimed he had bought with his own money had actually been paid for using funds connected to Zinal's family investments. The truth became impossible to deny. Neither woman had known the complete story. Both had been manipulated. Instead of rushing into an emotional confrontation, they made a different decision. They organized every message, every financial record, every receipt, and every document in perfect order. They wanted facts, not accusations. They wanted proof that no one could deny. By the time they finished, they were no longer two strangers connected by betrayal. They were two women standing together, determined to let the truth speak louder than Omari's lies. A week later, everything was ready. Zinal had no interest in shouting, creating a public scene, or taking revenge. She wanted the truth to be impossible to escape. Every message had been organized. Every bank transfer had been matched with the correct dates. Every document had been carefully reviewed by professionals. She knew that once Omari walked into that room, there would be no way for him to explain away what he had done. That morning, she called him with her usual calm voice. "I've arranged a meeting with financial advisors," she said. "They want to review some of our long-term investments and discuss future planning." Omari didn't hesitate. "Of course," he replied. "I'll be there." His voice sounded relaxed. He believed it would be another ordinary business meeting. He had no idea that the life he had carefully built on lies was about to collapse. Later that afternoon, Omari arrived at the office building wearing one of his favorite suits. He smiled politely at the receptionist before walking toward the conference room. As he opened the door, his confident expression disappeared. Zinal was already sitting at the table. Next to her sat Naledi. Across from them were a lawyer and two forensic accountants with several neatly arranged files and laptops. For a long moment nobody spoke. Omari looked from one face to another, trying to understand what was happening. Then Zinal quietly said, "Please have a seat." He remained standing. His eyes stopped on Naledi. Then they moved to the stacks of documents covering the table. The room felt completely silent. One of the accountants connected a laptop to the large screen on the wall. Within seconds, the first conversation appeared. It was one of the deleted messages Omari believed had disappeared forever. Then another message appeared. After that came travel confirmations, hotel reservations, voice notes, photographs, and banking records. Everything was arranged in perfect order, showing exactly when each event had happened. Omari's face slowly lost its color. He tried to speak, but no words came out. Every excuse he had prepared disappeared the moment he saw the evidence. The lawyer calmly explained that the cloud backup had preserved information long before the messages were deleted. The financial records showed hidden transfers from joint investments into undisclosed accounts. There were dates, amounts, receipts, and signed documents. Nothing had been guessed. Everything had been verified. For the first time in months, Omari realized the truth wasn't hidden anymore. It was right in front of him, and no deleted message could ever erase it again. The conference room remained silent for several long moments. Omari looked at the screen, then at the documents on the table, and finally at Zinal. He searched for an explanation that could save him, but every answer disappeared before he could speak. The evidence was complete. Every deleted message had been recovered. Every hidden money transfer had been traced. Every lie had been placed in its proper order. First, he tried to defend himself. "You don't understand," he said quietly. "It's not what it looks like." But nobody interrupted him. Nobody argued. The lawyer simply placed another document on the table. One of the accountants opened another file showing the movement of money from the family's joint investments into accounts Omari had never told Zinal about. There was nowhere left to hide. Omari slowly lowered his head. After several painful minutes, he finally admitted the truth. He confessed that he had believed changing passwords, deleting conversations, and removing photographs would make everything disappear. He thought that if nobody could see the evidence, Eventually everyone would stop asking questions. He never imagined that an old cloud backup had quietly saved everything before he tried to erase it. Then he looked toward Naledi. "I'm sorry," he whispered. She shook her head. "You didn't only lie to your wife," she replied. "You lied to me too. You made me believe I was building a future with an honest man." Her voice was calm, but the disappointment in her eyes said more than anger ever could. Omari then turned toward Zinal, hoping she might still believe there was a way to fix everything. But she simply looked at him with tears in her eyes. "You didn't lose me because of one mistake," she said softly. "You lost me because you chose dishonesty over and over again." Those words filled the room with painful silence. Soon afterward, the legal process began. The hidden financial records were handed over for investigation, and Omari was informed that he could face serious consequences for moving shared funds without permission. The successful career he had spent years building was suddenly at risk. Friends who had trusted him began asking difficult questions, and his professional reputation quickly started to fall apart. In just one afternoon, Omari lost far more than his marriage. He lost the trust of two women who had believed in him. He lost the respect he had worked decades to earn. And he finally understood that it wasn't one bad decision that destroyed his life. It was hundreds of small lies that eventually became too heavy to carry. The weeks that followed were some of the hardest Zinal had ever lived through. There were moments when the pain felt almost impossible to carry. 21 years of memories couldn't simply disappear overnight. Every room in the house reminded her of the life they had built together. Every family photograph brought both happy memories and heartbreaking questions. Many people expected her to fight back. Some friends encouraged her to expose Omari on social media. Others wanted her to tell everyone exactly what he had done and make sure the whole city knew the truth. They believed public humiliation would be the best form of justice. But Zinal chose a different path. She had already lost enough. She refused to lose her peace as well. Instead of spending every day talking about betrayal, she focused on the person who needed her most, her teenage daughter. She knew the divorce was painful for everyone, and she didn't want her child growing up surrounded by anger and endless arguments. She answered difficult questions with honesty, but never filled her daughter's heart with hatred. She wanted her to remember that one person's bad choices should never steal another person's future. Little by little, Zinal also returned her attention to the business she had built with years of hard work. Her interior architecture studio had always been her dream, and now it became the place where she slowly rebuilt her confidence. She accepted new clients, designed beautiful homes, and poured her energy into creating spaces filled with hope instead of sadness. Every successful project reminded her that her future still belonged to her. There were still difficult mornings. Sometimes an old song or a familiar place brought tears to her eyes. Healing wasn't fast and it certainly wasn't easy, but every new day became a little lighter than the one before. One afternoon, while standing inside a newly completed home she had designed, Zinal looked through the large windows as sunlight filled the rooms. She smiled quietly. For the first time in many months, she realized she wasn't thinking about Omari anymore. She was thinking about tomorrow. That was the moment she understood something powerful. Revenge might have given her a few moments of satisfaction, but peace gave her an entirely new life. The betrayal would always be part of her story, but it would never become the ending of it. Her greatest victory wasn't proving Omari wrong. It was proving to herself that even after the deepest heartbreak, she could still choose happiness, dignity, and hope. More than a year passed, and life looked completely different. The pain that had once followed Zinal everywhere had slowly been replaced with something she never thought she would feel again: peace. It hadn't happened overnight. It came through many small steps, difficult decisions, and quiet mornings when she chose to keep moving forward instead of looking back. Now she lived in a warm, beautiful home that she had designed herself. Every room reflected her creativity, strength, and fresh beginning. There were no painful memories hiding behind the walls. It was a place filled with light, hope, and the promise of a better future. One sunny morning, Zinal prepared breakfast before leaving for work. She poured herself a cup of coffee and sat by the window as golden sunlight filled the kitchen. Birds sang outside, and the peaceful silence felt comforting instead of lonely. Her phone rested on the table beside her. The screen faced upward. It wasn't hidden under a newspaper. It wasn't turned upside down. There were no secret notifications to erase. No nervous hands reaching to grab it. When the phone rang, she smiled, picked it up, answered the call, and placed it back on the table without a second thought. That simple moment made her stop and think. A year earlier, a phone had become the center of fear inside her marriage. Every password change, every deleted message, and every hidden notification had filled her heart with questions. She had spent months believing that the phone itself was the problem. Now she understood the truth. The phone had never destroyed her marriage. The passwords hadn't destroyed it. The deleted chats hadn't destroyed it. Those were only tools used to hide something much deeper. What truly broke their relationship was the choice to lie again and again. Trust had disappeared long before the evidence was discovered. The cloud backup had only revealed what dishonest decisions had already created. Zinal looked around her peaceful home and smiled. She no longer needed answers. She no longer wondered what had happened. She no longer carried the heavy weight of unanswered questions. She had found something far more valuable than revenge. She had found freedom. As she picked up her keys and walked toward the front door, she realized that truth has a quiet way of finding the light, no matter how carefully someone tries to hide it. Because when trust is gone, no password in the world is strong enough to keep the truth locked away forever. Secrets can hide behind lock screens for a while, but honesty is the only password capable of protecting a relationship forever. If this story touched your heart, let us know in the comments whether trust can ever be rebuilt after betrayal. And if you believe the truth always finds its way into the light, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this story with someone who values honesty above everything else.